Hi, welcome to another one of the videos. This one in the series about training methodologies and explaining and understanding training. So this particular one is focused on those very specific sessions that we do, which are the sometimes labeled test sessions or calibration sessions. So the CSS swim test, the max effort 30-minute run TT test, and the FTP sessions we do, of which there's quite a few. So the reason to do this is over time I've started to get experience of probably 3 different types of reactions to these sessions. About a third of the group, people I've been working with, they are almost indifferent to them. They do the session, they get some data from it, and they carry on. About a third of the group is quite apprehensive before the sessions. They're a little bit concerned of it. They feel that apprehension, and it's expressed either a nervousness about the effort they're going to have to put in, or a nervousness about the sense of the results that come out. About a third of the group also really has some quite large mental thought process around it. It's quite significant, and I wanted to walk through some points. I've got some notes here just to walk through, so apologies if my head ducks down a little bit, to help frame what the sessions are, why we do them, what you can take from it, and different ways to reflect upon these sessions. So the key part for me is the reason why we do them is to get a measure of your personal intensity levels, your zones. So this is really important when we then do plans that require you to work at certain intensity levels. Someone who's running a sub 20 5k has a different pace that they want to work at to someone who's pacing a 25-minute or a 30-minute 5k. So it's really important that we gather that data so that when we're setting sessions for you throughout your training plan, you're training at a level which is appropriate to yourself. Similar on the Zwift and the Turbo sessions, that you get your personalized training intensity, and it's that calibration exercise which is the primary goal for these sessions. It's not about maximizing performance, it's about calibration so that the rest of your training, when we're working on different intensity levels, it's calibrated to you. So when we're looking at the effectiveness of training, the keys are the frequency, so how often you're doing those sessions, the duration or the distance that you're doing a session on, and crucially, the intensity level. Just excuse me, my paper's blown away. There we go. So without that intensity level, sessions can really vary in what you're training. So this calibration is absolutely of the essence. What it's not about absolute performance. It's not about PB'ing some of these sessions. It's about where you are in your training schedule and the calibration for you to personalize the rest of your next block in your training plan. Something also to bear in mind is when you do these individualized one-off sessions, I'm going to say something a little bit provocative here. The data is wrong. So why is the data wrong? So the data is wrong because quite often the data is used to extrapolate out a different number. For example, when you go shopping for children's clothes, you buy the children's clothes based on age as an approximation for the size of the clothes. When you look at someone's height, you can probably make a reasonable approximation on their shoe size. When you look at someone's, let's use FTP level, it's come from a test which is an approximation of an FTP. So the definition of FTP is that power that you can hold for an hour sustainably. The tests that we do are not 1 hour tests. They are a ramp test, they are 3-minute tests, they are 8-minute tests, they are 20-minute tests, they are 20 minutes with or without other tests around them. All of them take that data and then use it to extrapolate. Well, if you can do this for 20 minutes, potentially you can do X for an hour. So it's also, so that's one margin of error, of wrongness that's introduced, because what you're saying is the 1 hour is here based on these 20 minutes or sub tests. Why do we do that? Because as hard as the 20-minute tests are, as hard as the ramp tests are, doing an hour test is incredibly hard. It's something you would want to train for specifically. And again, it's not actually what we're aiming for. We're not aiming, for some of you we're closer to it, but we're not aiming for performance in a 1 hour test. What we're aiming for, and bring it right back to the fundamentals, is we're aiming for an understanding of a level of intensity that's individualized to you. So it actually doesn't really matter. There is some nuance, but it doesn't matter so much what test we're trying to do. All we're trying to do is find a level whereby we can vary power for you individualized through your sessions. The other reason why they're wrong, and again, kind of saying this provocatively, is that that test that you performed was done under certain conditions. When you then look at the conditions by which you do your training, they vary. So they can vary on when you last ate, they can vary on the training part of the training block that you're in, they can vary on the stress you had at work, they can vary on the point you are in your menstrual cycle, they can vary on when you had your last rest recovery adaptation period. They can vary on so many different factors that it can knock your level off by quite a bit. We've had people who have been late to do one of their sessions and have gone in really quite pumped up, quite aggressive, and used that to perform well, as in they get a high number in their FTP test. Other people have gone in fairly recovered and actually found that their level is quite high as well and surprised themselves on where that level is. Other people have gone in feeling that they've gone through a really good training block and found that their level is below where they thought they might be, probably because of fatigue. Again, what we're looking for is not that absolute number. We want to know where you are so we can vary it for your training program. A big thing is, if we wanted to get you performing to your max on that specific test, we would probably have somewhere in the region of 4, 6, 8 weeks lead up to it as an event, and we'll be treating it as an event. So for some of you, I've worked with you to get improvements in your 5K run time. It's an absolute goal. In that, we've gone through some prep work, then we've taken you into a build phase, then we've taken you into a peaking phase where we've actually ran 5Ks in some very distinct training session patterns, and we've used that as a run-in, the lead-in to your actual 5K PB attempt. We've also done things like have pacers work with you so that you're running this under very specific conditions. We don't do that with our FTP or our TT. What we want is a level which is appropriate to base your training from. Should we want to PB some of these tests, some of these sessions, we can do that type of prep, but it's quite intrusive in your training. So you would taper for it. You would tailor your specific training to be focused on that particular session. It's good to see general movements and trends in a positive way, but whenever you're looking at the results from those sessions, what you want to do is think about the training you've had, and specifically, have we been training to maximize this particular number? And if we haven't, then the idea that we would have certain key improvements, we shouldn't look for that. That's not the purpose of it. Let me just check my notes. Okay, so 2 other considerations on these, and in terms of once you've done the test or your reaction to the sessions. Be careful about reflecting on the results of the session and your own sense of progress, growth, self-worth. You will put a lot of personal effort during the session into maximizing your performance on it, maximizing your numbers. With that level of commitment, quite often you can reflect on it and say, well, am I making the type of progress I'm expecting? Before you do that interpretation, make sure you step back and consider, what is it that you've been training for? And should this result reflect certain training objectives? The test should not be overblown in terms of its importance. As I said, there's quite a few variables that can go into this. What you're looking at is steady progress month on month towards whatever goal we've agreed is your target goal. Not necessarily, it might be, but not necessarily progress in some of these specific sessions and these specific numbers. Be kind to yourself as well. It can be quite challenging when you put that much effort and determination into that individual session. It'd be very, very psychologically and physically draining. Be kind to yourself and don't overjudge yourself on the results that you get out of this. What I'm looking for from it is that you've performed at a level which is maximum, so that it's repeatable, so that you're doing the same protocol each time. The easiest way to judge that is to ask for max effort. It's also the way in which the tests and the sessions are designed. When you give that max effort, it can be quite easy at the end of it to feel absolutely drained and to look upon this as something which is judging the value of yourself. Am I a good athlete? And to compare with others. I would really caution you about considering and comparing your results with someone else. Strava can really encourage this behavior. Be careful. For many people, it can be quite mentally challenging to have that comparison, because you're likely to tend towards looking at people that are stronger. And for some, that can be motivational. It gives you that sense of spurring you on. But for most people, it can be more negative. Zwift also, you've got to be careful in this, because a lot of it is ranking based, particularly when you're going into events or races. And the temptation is to have a very strong desire to improve, to be stronger in the races, to move up categories, which is great. Be careful how much that sense of worth comes from looking at other people. Look to your own journey, your own personal growth, your own goals that you've defined, and the own balance with life, with other things, rather than looking too much at others. Okay, let me just double check my notes. Sorry, rub my nose, I've got a cobweb that's just blown onto it. I think that's us. So just to go back to the rationale to have this particular talk through, the key on these sessions, whether the CSS test, FTP test for the bike, run tests, or even looking at some tests we can do on flexibility and strength work, the key on it is for training purposes. They are not designed as assessments on your individual performances. They're not designed as events in their own right. They're designed to help calibrate the level for your training. If you go in with that mindset, they're a huge asset to you. If anyone's got any particular concerns on the tests, the build up to them, why we're wanting to have certain tests, the frequency of test cycles, or even to look at that calibration without necessarily using certain sessions, we can look at alternatives where we can get some data from other means, more event-based. Then just talk to me. Talk to me and we can walk it through. I realise that the challenges around these, because they are max effort based, they can be significantly challenging. So I want to make sure that I'm there to help support you through these. Hopefully that's a good walkthrough on the particular sessions. We're just shy of 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop now. As I say, always any questions, either flag in the group and we can look at techniques, whether physical or mental techniques in these sessions, or flag to me on WhatsApp one-to-one or in your individual calls. Okay, thanks everyone.